Real change was finally coming.
End the anything goes culture on Wall Street with real regulation that protects your investments and pensions. Crack down on lobbyists once and for all, so their backroom deal-making no longer drowns out the voices of the middle class and undermines our common interests as Americans. And yes, bring a responsible end to the war in Iraq, so we stop spending billions each month rebuilding their country when we should be rebuilding ours.
Listen to what Matt Taibbi, a news correspondent for Rolling Stones, had to say on December 9th.
What's taken place in the years since Obama won the presidency has turned out to be one of the most dramatic political about-faces in our history. Elected in the midst of a crushing economic crisis brought on by a decade of orgiastic deregulation and unchecked greed, Obama had a clear mandate to rein in Wall Street and remake the entire structure of the American economy.
But what did we get? An administration dominated by Wall Street fat cats, insiders, and former lobbyists. You could not be more of an insider than is Ben Bernanke. Listen as our economic man of the year predicts first the housing bubble and then unemployment.
What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis. So what I think is more likely is that house prices will slow, maybe stabilize, might slow consumption spending a bit. I don't think it's going to drive the economy too far from its full employment path, though.
I could go on and on about the Wall Street fat cats and insiders that have been placed on the backs of the taxpayer by Obama's economic team of Wall Street fat cats and insiders. But I have to make room for all the former registered lobbyists who are also part of Obama's team of outsiders.
They will not work in my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I am president.
Trying to meet the healthcare needs of our nation of 300 million people by just hoping the private sector will provide has been a disaster. Check that. Actually, it's been a disaster for the American people and the American economy. It's been great for the insurance companies. The CEOs of the 10 largest health insurance companies were taking home an average compensation of $11.9 million each.
An insurance exchange, including a public option to increase competition and keep insurance companies honest. And choose what's best for your family.
Must, he said. Must. He has changed his mind on that now, apparently.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
Obama's picks for the number 1 and 2 men at the Department of Defense are not reflective of change. The Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, is the same man as we had under George Bush. Real change has in fact become no change. And the number 2 man was a former lobbyist for Raytheon, a company that has paid the U.S. government millions to settle several overcharging disputes, and a company that has been involved in numerous bribery scandals. These guys will not likely be leading peace movements anytime soon, nor restructuring what is a systemically corrupt military procurement system. Oil in Iraq, oil in Iran, oil in the Middle East, trillions of dollars of oil and natural gas wealth in the Caspian Basin. the construction of a multi-billion-dollar pipeline in Afghanistan, nuclear weapons in Pakistan, and a real or contrived nuclear threat in Iran, plus terrorism, plus bin Laden. There are far too many American interests to protect and to procure to ever leave this region. Reasons to justify an ongoing presence in this area will always be found. This shell game has already begun. U.S. troops have been reduced in Iraq, while they've been increased to 100,000 in Afghanistan.
We now have permanent bases in Iraq. We've had them in Kuwait for a while. We have permanent bases in Afghanistan. We are building permanent bases in Uzbekistan. We actually have 4 bases in Georgia. So if you draw a map that connects the dots between all of the bases that we have done since the Cold War ended, what you see is American military hegemony covering 90% of the globe's energy resources in terms of gas and in terms of oil.
Why do you think that we have just built the largest embassy in the world, with 21 buildings on 104 acres, with 5,500 workers, at a cost of close to $600 million in Iraq? Does the word headquarters come to mind?
This administration also puts forward a false choice between the liberties we cherish and the security we provide. I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. No more tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. No more ignoring the law when it is inconvenient. That is not who we are. And it's not what is necessary to defeat the terrorists. The FISA court works. The separation of powers works. Our Constitution works. We will again set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers and that justice is not arbitrary.
What is going on? Obama filled his administration with exactly the people he pledged to protect us from. Trillions were given to the banks with no strings attached. The public option was eliminated from healthcare. More troops are put in harm's way in Afghanistan. None of our civil liberties have been restored. In fact, police suppression and brutality is escalating. Corporate immunity was granted to the drug companies, and then a false flu pandemic was declared, resulting in a multi-billion-dollar windfall. The nuclear industry is guaranteed billions in loans. Offshore oil drilling originally was expanded by Obama. Staged town meetings and White House censorship has occurred. In spite of pledges of transparency and millions of U.S. citizens who believe that the government is covering something up, Obama refuses to shine the light on Bush, Cheney, or the events of 9/11. Isn't it interesting that the Department of Defense and the Fed are both being run by Bush appointees? It is becoming increasingly clear why these two will never be investigated by the Obama administration. And then it finally dawned on me. The light finally came on. Obama was not the man behind the curtain, and neither was George Bush. They were simply players. Key players, power players, definitely the back row of the chessboard, but they were simply doing the bidding of the real power brokers, the real men behind the curtain. For the important moves, the key decisions are always being determined and controlled by big money and the power elite.